Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a great show for you today. We are going to be chatting with Bruce Black all about growing fruits in containers. Now, normally these are grown in the ground, but can you grow them on your patio or your deck? Bruce will tell us all about it, but you know I'm not doing this by myself. I'm joined, as always, every single week by horticulture educator Ken Johnson in Jacksonville. Hey, Ken.
Hello, Chris. Do you have any container fruits?
Do I have container fruits? Let's see. No, I don't think I do have any containerized fruits. I might remember one between here and now, but no, I have some in-ground ones, but nothing growing in pots. How about yourself?
We do. We've got some. I don't want to spoil the surprise, though.
You got crazy stuff. I don't know. Yeah, we'll dive into that here in a second. It's yeah. So, but I think that when it comes to growing and gardening, Ken, it's getting warmer. It's hot outside. You got cleaned up very nice. You look great.
Thank you.
Well, what is coming down the pipeline for us here in Central Illinois? We've been talking about this a lot, but let's one more update on Cicada Watch 2024.
Cicada Watch. So April 30th, I think last I looked, soil temperatures in Springfield were about 61, 62 degrees, 8 inches deep. 64 degrees is when we'll start seeing some emergence of cicadas. It's going to be in the 80s this week. So put all that together, I'm thinking it's going to be pretty soon when we start having cicadas show up. I think they've Arkansas, Kentucky, Southern Missouri, they're emerging. So it's a matter of time. I know we've been saying that for a while, but that time is getting much closer.
So hopefully, if you do have them baby trees out there, maybe get them covered up and protected and ready to go. You can watch our episode last week about techniques to do that, ways to do that. And yeah, just buckle up and enjoy the show and the symphony of the cicada song.
Yes, embrace it.
Excellent. Yes. Well, Ken, back to the topic at hand today, growing fruits in containers. I think it is time to introduce our special guest. We are going to be chatting with Bruce Black. Oh, wait, wait, let me back up. Introduce him as Professor Bruce Black. Bruce, welcome to the Good Growing Podcast.
Thank you, Chris.
Professor.
Thank you, Ken. Good to be here. Good community college reach out there to my adjunct position as part of Extension.
If you didn't need another thing to do, Bruce, you are now teaching at community college. So, yeah, how have you kind of enjoyed having access, I think, to a greenhouse and a classroom? I mean, you get fancy tools now. Has that been fun?
So yes, it has been a blast. Just to give a little backstory, Extension partnered with Sauk Valley Community College in Dixon, Illinois to expand their programming, expand our programming, and coordinate their new greenhouse. It is 6,000 square feet. So for those thinking about this, usually most high school greenhouses are about a fourth that size. So you can fit 4 of them together. 30 feet by 50 is usually that nice high school size. This is 60 by 100. So we have lots of room split into 2 bays. And because it is a new greenhouse, I got to design and build the inside up. Horticulturist dream right there.
That's amazing, Bruce. Oh my goodness. And wow. Well, I'll see you in a little bit. I got to get in the car and go up to where Bruce is at, see if they'll offer me a job too.
Well, you never know, but intro to horticulture is going to be my class either way. So sorry, Chris.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're glad that you can still swing it. You're still with Extension, and now you're teaching at Sauk Valley Community College. So we're happy that you're still here with us. And now, in the words of the Joker, where does he get those wonderful toys? We'll be expecting some amazing plants at every meeting that we have here in the future, Bruce. just bring us bananas and oranges and all kinds of stuff, right? Yeah.
Ideally we might get there, but right now we're growing tomatoes, peppers, things for our Master Gardener plant sale that's coming up. So the traditional spring sales that you would see for a college or high school greenhouse, that's what we're got going on right now. Did our first hydroponic lettuce harvest last Monday. Made a big deal out of it because it was the very first initial harvest that the students had planted. So from seed all the way up to harvest was a blast.
Good
Very
deal.
cool. Very cool. And that's not the only thing you've been up to, Bruce, too. You are also just kind of announcing this. It's really just in the works in the beginning, but you do have a date for a very popular online kind of learning experience. So tell viewers, listeners about that.
Yeah. So for those who might have participated in the past and some who are new to this, we have a partnership with Iowa State University that came out of the COVID era. And so during that time, you really couldn't go out, you needed education. And we started offering a virtual garden day Saturday. And so we've got a date coming up for 2024. That's going to be October 19th from 9 a.m. to 12:30. That's our current hold date that we planned after last year. And we are just in the initial stages right now, but I wanted to let people know that that information should be coming out hopefully soon before summer so that we can get it into our local Midwestern news services.
Well, and so keep that in mind. Listeners, viewers, we will probably be plugging that here in the future. It's a great event, partnership between Illinois and Iowa. So we look forward to that. But we're not here to talk about online learning, even though you're learning, listening, viewing this online. And we're not here to talk about greenhouses, although we might do that here in just a second. We are here to talk about growing fruit in containers. So topic at hand. Ken, would you mind kicking us off in our first line of questions, please?
I can do that. So I think one question people always have is, why would I want to do this? Why would I want to grow fruit in containers? What are some of the advantages to doing this?
Okay. So I love this question. And it's how I always start every topic that every class that I do on container fruits. In recent years, about the last 10 to 20 years, gardeners have been looking to downsize their properties. So homes are starting to get smaller. Nobody, I won't say nobody, but the average person doesn't have time to take care of a whole acreage with all the responsibilities that they might have these days. And so the one constant that has remained at the forefront is, yes, we're downsizing, going away from the large yards to a small apartment or small house with a small backyard, limiting what you might have to mow, but keeping that fresh produce demand. I want to be able to grow it. And so the horticulture industry has actually, over the last 10 to 20 years, has expanded on that want, need, and desire, and started breeding plants that are smaller, more compact, and well suited for containers. Some of the benefits for container grown fruit is you get them quicker. So you are establishing them in a smaller space. In most cases, we're using about a 20-inch container or a 20-inch pot. So to give the audience just size reference, about a whiskey barrel is about 20 inches. And so with having to cut down the establishment period over having a dwarf ingrown apple tree, for say, you're looking at apples within 2 to 3 years versus 5 to 7. For blueberries, instead of 2 to 3 years, you're looking at maybe 1 year. For strawberries, in some cases, you're looking at half a season. if you're doing the ever-bearing strawberries. So you remove the first flush of strawberry blossoms, and then you let it establish itself, grow the root system, and it'll flower that next flush, and you'll be able to get strawberries off of there. So it does turn around the time, and turn that ROI, of investment, back to the gardener sooner.
So, Bruce, you mentioned dwarf-sized plants. I am guessing it would more than likely be a mistake to try to grow something that has not been bred for this in like that 20-inch container, correct?
Mhm.
Like, I don't want to be putting a normal sized bramble, blueberry. Like, I don't want to put that in a pot, right?
Yeah,
Because
so
I've tried.
so tell us
Didn't
your
go well.
firsthand experience.
I thought I could be cool and I could grow like blackberries from like a maybe even a little bit smaller than a whiskey barrel container, and the blackberries just grew out of the container, and then they tip rooted, and they brambled on.
Mhm.
As I think was Ed Zeppelin that said, "Bramble on." I might get chastised for saying that incorrectly, but um, yeah, that it did not work well. I didn't get any fruit either. I just got aggressive blackberry plants that didn't like being in the container.
So that is one thing that can happen, is that they spread out of the pot, and then they become the Bramblin' Man,
Mhm.
which I can't think of who sang that song either, but it's playing in my head right now when you said brambles.
That's
Um,
right.
so our brambles can escape. They can tip, as Chris said. They can also come out the bottom. If you have holes, if you're putting them on the edge of the patio, they can start to root out and run. One other thing that could happen is if you put a semi-dwarfing or a dwarfing tree in a small container, it's not going to have the support it needs. And even if you have a 20-inch container full of soil, your apple tree can get top heavy and fall over, get load heavy, and then you get more snappage and breakage, because they're not meant to go in a container. They don't have the anchorage that they need to root into the soil. So I've also not had anybody tell me that they tried to put a seed from an apple in there, because 40-foot seedling trees in a 20-inch container, that I'm sure there's a joke in there somewhere, but
Mhm.
um, I would not be the one to find it, because my luck could probably fall in a garage or something.
Yeah.
Um, if it got that tall at all. So really looking at the different kinds that there are. One of the things when I was looking into this topic, because this was my COVID research at home. So I can't go anywhere. I can't do anything. What can I do at home? I'm going to start a backyard orchard, or a backyard bramble field, but I don't have the space. I didn't at the time. I had a patio. And so in looking at this, one thing that I found out is that in Europe, container fruit has been there for years and years. So in the 1950s, they have had what are called ballerina fruit trees. And these are those long, tall fruit trees that just produce apples right off the side. So it looks like a ballerina standing on point, and they're just in a standard container, which have been a great backyard use for these fruits. Um, the ballerina trees are a natural mutation that was inherited from the Macintosh wheat check apple. And then has become a popular type of apples that have been in the United States being worked on. There's multiple series out there. The urban apple, which was developed in the Czech Republic, is one that was around for a while. And then there have been some more popular ones showing up on other fruit retailer sites. So like Stark Brothers, Burpee has some fruit available through them. So they're popping up with more popularity as the shift in small space gardening continues.
And so when we're talking apples,
Mhm.
we have dwarf apple trees. What other types of fruits are we thinking about here? Would we consider growing in a pot or a container?
So for the containers that or the fruit that we can grow in containers, apples are one, blueberries, strawberries, blackberries and raspberries. There's currants, there's figs, which figs, and then the citrus, so lemons, limes. You can throw in pineapple. Usually those are the tropical house plants that people think of, that I'm going to grow those inside, that we wouldn't typically grow here in Illinois, especially not to put outside like we would need to with the apples, blueberries, strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. So there's kind of a different set when you answer this question. There's the ones that have been grown as houseplants, and then there's the ones that we're growing for food supplement. Now, one thing I should just mention is with the apples and some of the new container fruits, these are meant to be supplements. They're not to be replacements for, like if you would put an apple tree in your backyard, you might get 100 pounds of apples. Off of the ballerina trees or the columnar apple trees, you're going to get maybe 20 every growing season. So it's more of a fresh supplement than a total replacement. So that's one thing just to kind of point out for people that are thinking about making the switch or making the dive to container fruits, is that this is to still give you the freshest fruit possible, because you're literally walking off of your patio, walking out on your deck, picking your fruit, and then coming in to either eat it or use it. So that is also one of those benefits that I forgot to mention earlier.
So are there certain cultivars or anything we should be looking for kind of these more containerized types?
Definitely. So for the types of container fruits that you want to look at, apple is definitely going to be one that is going to be specific. You can look up the brand Urban Apples, like I mentioned previously, and they have a number of cultivars under the Urban Apple series. And then the other one that I want to say just came out last year or 2 years ago from Stark Brothers was the Stark series. So these are registered trademark to the Stark Brothers company, and they have a Spire series. So Spire relating to the fact that they just stay on the central axis or the central leader. They have 4 available, if I remember right, in their series. So then with the Urban Apples, they have 4 cultivars available as well. And just like Stark Brothers is a registered trademark, the Urban Apple series is a trademark. And I don't know how much you guys get into trademarks versus cultivar names in the plant industry, but sometimes it's easier to use the trademark name because sometimes those cultivar and patent names are random letters and numbers. And so this is one exception when I talk about a cultivar for a specific thing, that it's easier to use that trademark name because it's not a long set of numbers. So those are two of the commercial brands that are available for our apples. And so that gives you roughly about 8 cultivars to look for or choose from. And those are by any means not a endorsement of those two companies, just two of the leaders that are really coming along. And the next one for the brambles, again, this is going to mention a company but not be a recommendation or an endorsement for them, but it is a series called the Blueberry collection, and these came out
Bushel and berry. They changed their name.
Bushel and Berry. Yep. Thank you, Ken. So Bushel and Berry had been from a nursery in, I think it was established in the 70s in Oregon, the state. And I have to say that because Oregon, Illinois is right next to Dixon. So whenever I say Oregon, people are like, that Oregon? No, not this Oregon. And so they have really taken the lead and focus on creating some unique blueberries, raspberries, and blackberries. And all of their container fruit are bred to have not only the nice patio look, so if you've got a nice container, they're supposed to have a bald or mounded habit to make them accentuate the pot so that it's a good piece of a nice addition to any patio. And most of these are only going to be, they're going to need a 15 to 20 inch pot. So their roots for all of these containers, their roots only need to go down 15 to 20 inches, which when you think about is incredible to keep them balanced and stable.
Ken here, just going to cut in real quick. If you're wondering, the next couple plants Bruce is going to be talking about are blueberries. And with that, we will return to Bruce.
And so one of the more popular ones that people have probably heard of is jelly bean. And so jelly bean is a dwarf habit, 1 to 2 feet tall, and it has that mounded or globe-like habit on there. Then there's also their peach sorbet, and this one is noted for its orangish rust color fall foliage. So you're not only getting the fruit of these patio plants, but you're also getting a nice accentuation with that, which a lot of people, when you think about landscape design or patio design, you don't really take into consideration your vegetables or your fruit. So that consideration of this new area of patio or small space design is really taking that to a newer level for design, which is really nice. And then continuing with their unique naming system, when we talk about the raspberries, they've got some raspberry shortcake, keeping in mind that these only get 2 to 3 feet tall. So the nice proportion between patio or between container and plant, it's got that good ratio. They're compact. And one of the things that when I've talked to people who have been growing container fruits, one of their most favorite things is they are thornless. So you don't have to get gauntleted up. You don't have to wear a thick, heavy sweatshirt to go look for your raspberries and blackberries. You can just go out right off your patio in your pajamas with your coffee and pick it right fresh. And so those are just a couple of examples of berries. There's also the blackberry from Bushel and Berry called baby cakes. very similar on their care habit from the strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. And so one thing, we'll kind of pivot here to strawberries for a second. Strawberries, you can just use regular strawberries. So this is one where it's okay if you have a relative or a neighbor who's got some strawberries and you want to put them in a container. You can just use one of their daughter plants from their strawberry plant. And for those that don't know, the daughter plant is the next generation of a strawberry. So when the runner touches the ground, every 2 nodes, you're going to get a new daughter plant. And so when that second node touches, it will start rooting and produce that daughter plant. And for some people, they get too many daughter plants and then they give them away to friends. So this would be a great opportunity for a small space gardener to take one of those and put them on there.
You just gave me an idea, Bruce. So I do have strawberries in the ground, and they have crept out to the path that I take to the hose, to the spigot towards the house. And I could take some of those up that are in my way that I keep stepping on, and I could put them in a container. Boom. I do have patio fruit. Told you, Ken, I think of one. So I will have one by the end of the week.
And Chris, what that is a great idea. I think of a lot of people who have strawberries and they like to escape. Mine at home, they're escaping too. They're taking over another bed, which I don't mind because then I don't have to weed and plant this year. And there's pineberries in there too. So pineberries are the pineapple flavored strawberry. They're the whitish pink ones that you see in the grocery stores around Valentine's Day. We can grow those here. Not many people know that you can grow a pineberry here in Illinois. And it is a wonderfully great thing to grow in your backyard. And you can put them in your strawberry beds as well.
Cool. I have pineberries now. Add it to the list, Ken. Oh dear.
Gonna need a
The
bigger
weird
yard.
garden. Yeah. Less lawn. That's what I need. Need less lawn. Can't cut down any trees anymore. I'm plumb out of trees that I'm able to cut down, except for that Norway maple. Making notes as we talk. Thank you, Bruce. So I guess, Bruce, one question that comes to mind now, you said you did this in your backyard. I'm kind of thinking about containers here. This is more than just doing like an annual planting of petunias that we pull out. Maybe we put the container away. Do you have any tips about maybe like a good containers to use? Are we talking plastic? Are we talking clay? Are we talking stone? Like what concrete? What kind of container would you suggest that we use?
So that is a great question. And I'm going to steal an adage from somebody. The world is your oyster
Mm,
when you are planting in containers. So I have mine in the pseudo whiskey barrel. So it's a composite resin from a big box store. They're 20 inches in diameter and very, very heavy when you fill them up. So one of the things I always tell folks is think of where you want to put this and where you want to leave it. Because after a while, these can get pretty heavy, especially after a rain. So you want to really put it in a spot or put it in an area where it's easy to be moved. So if you're going to put it on your patio and you want to keep it in your patio, keep it there. That's perfectly fine. These container crops are still fruit crops, so they do need chilling hours to produce fruit. And so chilling hours is that sweet temperature between 32 degrees and 45 degrees that we get between November and March. And those chilling hours, every fruit plant has a different requirement of the number of chilling hours. And so apples is anywhere between 600 and 2000 chilling hours. Blueberries, it's very less, so like 600 chilling hours, I think. But all of our plants are going to have a chilling hours requirement. So in Northern Illinois, typically we do not have an issue hitting those chilling hour requirements. As you go down in the state towards the very southern end of the state, you have to look at the number of chilling hours that you can get to make sure that if you're growing a cold hardy variety, you have enough chilling hours. But as you get down to the southern part of the state, you might start growing things that we can't grow up here. So back to the container question, I have mine in those pseudo whiskey barrels, which is a resin compound. I've used plastic toy or laundry tubs. So the big ones with the rope handles, just drill a couple of holes in the bottom, and those make good patio containers. They're also great for tomatoes. I know this isn't a tomato show, but tomatoes are a fruit too.
It's true.
And so people have also used real whiskey barrels, cedar barrels, cedar planters. I have not tried them in cement planters, but I would not see an issue with growing them in cement planters. The one thing that, since we are growing them outside, keeping them outside for the winter, you want to put them in a protected area. So I got very lucky on the home that I bought. My patio is on the north side of the house. It has a western fence and a little gazebo area encasing the north and the west sides of my patio. So my neighbor's garage is also on that west side of the next side of that fence. So there's not a lot of area for that northwest cold wind that we get to really blow through there. So if we get enough snow during a given year, that is going to be a great amount of insulation to help keep the perennial crowns of those plants alive. And that's one of the things that we want to think about, is just kind of helping to get them to survive the winter, but also still giving them that temperature range of freezing to about 45 degrees to get those buds initiated. And so you can use straw just like you would with in-ground planting and put that on top. You could use the heavy duty form of floating row covers. They make an insulated version where you could just drape that around if you don't have enough snow cover. Bubble wrap or foam, if you get a lot of packages through the mail, can also be insulated in there to help it so that it doesn't freeze. And then just wrap it with a quilt or a blanket, a comforter, any extra kind of fabric that you would have definitely helps to build in that insulation. And then you would just keep that on the potted portion of the plant. You wouldn't have that on the above plant part. Because that's one of the downsides with container fruits, is you're not getting that advantage of the geothermal heat like we do when we plant in the ground. So the ground warms up faster and things start growing a little bit quicker. We don't have to worry about as much insulation because of that in-ground heat that we get. But with containers, they will go colder faster, and they'll also warm up sooner. So that's something that we've had to take into consideration this year with the crazy weather that we had in February, because all of my backyard patio fruit crops started to bud out right about the time that we got 2 hard freezes back to back.
Mhm.
So in that case, I had to run over, put that big old quilt back on it, and this time actually putting it over the entire plant to protect those buds. So even though we're taking advantage of growing quicker, there's a little bit more of a risk game in there. So you got to really watch the weather.
Yeah. 3 days of 70 degrees in February, not so great. Felt good, not so great for the plants.
Say one thing I've done with the container fruit I have is when we get those really cold, like polar vortex, negative degree temperatures, I've dragged those pots we have a detached garage, insulated garage. So I'll drag them in there, which sometimes is easier said than done. But that'll help protect them too. And I did not do that this year when we got that real cold snap and I lost one of my raspberries, my baby cakes. But the top growth is all killed off, but it's now rooting out through the bottom of the pot. So you have to figure that one out now.
So it will live again.
Life will find a way.
It's going to turn into a mess, but yes, it is still alive. All right. So you mentioned, the kind of things we need to do with cold temperatures and how chilling hours affect our containerized fruit here. Is there any other considerations, kind of soil do we need to use, fertilizing, all of that fun stuff?
All of that fun stuff. I think it's the mandatory stuff. Well, I won't say mandatory because you can still not do it and still get some fruit. You just won't get as much fruit. So since we're growing in containers, we are going to want to stick to a potting mix that you can get at any garden center or big box store. One over the other doesn't matter. I get that question a lot, which is better. They're all generally formulated around the same thing, sphagnum peat moss, perlite, or vermiculite. So they're formulated to hold that water better than our soil for our containers. Makes it a little bit more breathable for our plant friends and allows them to really have that good, long-lasting life in those containers. Fertilizer is going to be one of those things that is going to be beneficial. If anybody has grown in-ground fruit, you know that we recommend pruning and fertilizing on an annual basis. So far, knock on wood, I'm year 3.5, I'll say, on my container fruits. I have just added a balanced fertilizer to them every year as I'm just going out and doing my containers. I'll add a little general fertilizer to the top for the year. And that has done fine. I have not had to prune them yet. They're still getting bigger. I will say one of the cold periods we had, I did have to go out and cut a little of the dead off, but not substantial pruning like we would with an in-ground apple tree or bramble. Water is going to be your friend. Since it is in a container, you may have to water a little bit more often, especially if this year is an indication for getting 70 degrees in February. Who knows what June, July, and August is going to look like. So you might be watering every day. Sometimes you might be watering twice a day. With fruit, one of the things that is beneficial is consistent watering. So consistent watering is going to get you bigger fruits, especially in blueberries. They actually did research in blueberries. Consistent watering over the growth time gets you, I forget if it's 10 or 18% larger blueberries. So it's very, very beneficial to have that consistent watering time. As we are getting closer to the peak of the growing season, one of the questions I always get asked, is it better to water your fruit before you go to work, or is it better when you come home? So I always tell people, if you can, water before you go to work, because the plant is going to be waking up from its night processes. And then the heat of the day, those roots are going to have something to draw on. Plants have those natural heat defenses that they can draw on to conserve water as you go through. But then take the 2-3 minutes, check your plants at the end of the day, 30 minutes if you've got a larger yard or lots of plants, and just make sure that things look healthy. You didn't get any sun scald or anything like that during the day. Another watering tip, water the base, not the base, but the top of the pot or the base of the plant, not watering the plant. We still want to watch out for those bacterial and fungal issues that can happen. They can happen still in container fruits. One of the big things I got to point out here. So people who grow blueberries, elemental sulfur is often used to acidify the pH to keep it in the range that it needs to be. Elemental sulfur does not work in a container pot because there's no microorganisms in that potting mix to break down the elemental sulfur into the form that it can be taken up into. So in this case, adding more peat moss every year, adding pine needles, using an acidic fertilizer is going to help you keep that container in that acidic grow zone. Potting mix is naturally acidic already because it's made from peat moss. And so just those annual treatments of acid or acidifying materials will help keep those plants growing. Now, one of the things that I'm still reading up on is if you add compost, which compost should have microbacterium in it, if that will break down the elemental sulfur. But that's one thing that I'm still reading up on to answer that question when it comes up in presentations.
So, Bruce, you had mentioned about watering and potential diseases. Now, when trees are in the ground, a lot of times people will call and say, hey, I got this problem, disease, bug, and a good recommendation that you'll often hear from an extension office is a multi-purpose tree fruit spray. So do we have a similar spray schedule with some of these containerized plants compared to the in-ground versions of them? Is it, I mean, we're still growing the same species. We still have the same pests that are attacking them. So if we keep encountering those pests, would a lot of those spray schedules still hold true?
So with that question, a lot of these newer cultivars are not going to have those pesticide recommendations. So these were mainly designed for, or mainly bred for home and backyard gardeners. They're not meant to be industry plants, so they're not going to have that high productivity. A lot of those backyard IPM strategies that we promote are going to be good for the blueberries, brambles, apples, strawberries. Of course, any of those recommendations that we have that we teach in Extension Master Gardener are applicable. It's just the pesticide sprays are usually hard to recommend in these instances. Because we're eating the fruits, we have to monitor that re-entry interval or pre-harvest interval for when it is safe for any kind of pesticide, whether that's organic or conventional, to break down before consumption.
Pick those scab-resistant apples, folks. Sorry, Honeycrisp.
Just eat the scab or cut it out. So is there any other kind of specifics we should know about growing any of these different fruit or maybe pollination? What we need to do about that?
So I think one of the biggest things I'm just going to recommend is try it. Jump in. That's what I did. I haven't looked back. I love watching out the patio, seeing the fruits grow. One of the things in my house is usually whoever gets up first gets to go check the plants and often devours the fruit before anybody else. For pollination, same requirements that we give for any pollinating plant. The more pollinator activity in your area, the better your fruit are going to turn out. Since these are meant to be backyard plants, I would say any pollinator plants that you have in your backyard are going to improve facilitation of pollination of your apples. If your neighbors are growing apples, that's one thing I haven't considered yet. If somebody else has an apple tree or a crab apple in their backyard, what happens when you plant that seed from a columnar tree? My guess is it's not going to turn out to be another columnar tree. So be careful if you're going to go the seed bearing route. The other thing I would just share as a resource, when I was looking up container growing, there weren't a lot of extension resources out there. There were some good websites, but I did stumble on a book that's called Bountiful Containers. And this is by Rosemary Nicholas McGee and Maggie Stuckey. And there's a lot of good information in here. It's not just on container fruits. They have container herbs, container vegetables, and they give a lot of nice breakdown recommendation, things to consider for each plant. So this was a very good resource to use, easy to read. So as you mentioned, adjunct professor at a college, I've been reading a textbook all semester. I prefer this book. It's a lot easier to read. But then also, because of things that have been coming out, I know University of Illinois Extension has a new container gardening info sheet that came out 2 years ago that also talks about fruit growing, as well as vegetables and herbs. And Missouri Botanic was also a great resource for just learning more about the different fruit plants that are out there. Not just those that are for containers, but also just general how to grow information.
Well, it's a brave new world of patio containerized fruits. I guess let's maybe just also add, this is a lot of development happening from a horticultural standpoint pretty quickly. It's a lot is changing, and there's new names. You talk about trademarks and copyrights, and that's getting into muddy like rose territory where, whoa, that's a lot of legal stuff. It scares me. And we talk about different companies and retailers that might supply these. We don't have really good like university trials of this because it's happening so quickly. All these new cultivars and varieties are just popping on the market all over. So yeah, just do your research, folks. Yeah, we do have some resources that we will link below in the description. But this is fun. It's exciting. I'm going to get those strawberries planted. I want to look at maybe a raspberry on the back deck. That would be pretty cool.
Raspberry shortcake is a nice plant.
Okay. Writing it down.
It doesn't hold up to basketballs very well. I'll tell you that.
Or soccer balls.
Don't put it under basketball hoop. Okay. Well, that was a lot of great information about growing containerized fruit in your back patio or your back deck. The Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension, edited this week by Ken Johnson. A special thank you, Bruce. Thank you so much for stopping by this week, chatting with us about your experiences growing these in the backyard and your recommendations to folks. So thank you very much.
Always happy to be here, Chris, Ken. And if anybody has any questions, comments, or concerns, I'm always happy to help answer those.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Bruce. It was great. Yeah. Make sure you get all those emails.
I knew I was going to regret that the moment I said it.
And Chris, let's do this again next week.
Oh, we shall do this again next week. I'll be back with a garden bite for you folks, and then we are off to the races, some more exciting bug or I should say insect shows coming up after that. Ken. Oh man, I got something caught in my throat. Could it be a cicada leg? We'll find out on the next couple episodes of the Good Grain Podcast. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, watching. And as always, keep on growing.
I got a cicada leg in my teeth.